Hi, I'm Aaron F. Ross. In this tutorial on low poly modeling, we will build a simple TV. And you can see here it's got a few interesting features. Some curvature here, got some ports in the back for cables and such. We'll learn about basic polygon tools like extrude and boolean to cut these holes. We'll also apply a self-illuminated material, which is an incandescence map. I'll press the 7 key so you can see lighting here. As I rotate this light around, the illumination on the front face of the TV remains constant because it's using an incandescence map. Along the way, we'll learn a little bit about hard and soft edges as well as basic UV projection. All right, let's get started. As always, we'll start by creating a new project in Maya. Go to the File menu, Project window, make a new project. I'll call it Low Poly Maya Project. I'll just save it in the usual place in the user's documents, Maya Projects. I want to check in on my working units. Window Settings, Preferences, Settings. Linear working units are set to centimeter. I'm going to change it to inch. And you can see the grid get larger. Press the Save button to save out those preferences. Let's set up the grid as well. Display grid options. And for feet and inches, I'll set the length and width to 36 inches. Grid lines every 12 inches, subdivided by 12, with a little bit darker grid line and numbers turned on the axes. Press apply, and we can see now we've got imperial units. We can change the background here with Alt-B, cycle through those. What I want to build here is a simple TV. It should face in the positive Z direction. That's the convention. If you tumble around in the perspective view, you can see in the lower left-hand corner an axis tripod that indicates the orientation of the world axes. It's assumed that the viewer, or the perspective camera in this case, is going to be somewhere in the positive Z area here. So across this line, this is positive Z. The easiest way to get this straight is to simply use the top view. I'll tap the space bar and dolly back a bit in the orthographic views to enclose more of the scene. Here in the top view, I'll build my TV such that it's facing downward. Same would go for a character. He would face down in this top panel. Create Polygon Primitives Cube. Draw that out freehand in the top view, approximately 4 feet wide or so. Release the mouse, go over to the perspective view, and click and drag upward to give it some height. We'll just immediately go into the channel box. Set Translate X to 0 if it's not already at 0. I got lucky this time. Translate Z I'll set to 0 as well. Translate Y we're not sure because that's the elevation here. I can move it up and down, by the way, with the middle mouse button. Just select the name and then middle mouse drag. I want to adjust the Polycube 1 parameters here. These attributes are the creation parameters. I've done the math already on what the shape of this should be. It should be a 16 by 9 aspect ratio, and I've decided it's going to be a 42-inch television. In that case, because of the particular shape, I already know what the values need to be for width and height. I worked that out with the Pythagorean theorem. I'm not going to bore you with the algebra, but basically a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I can figure out what the width and height need to be based upon only the diagonal measurement, which is 42 inches. So the width I'm going to set to 36.6. And the height to 20.6. And now it's actually at a 16 by 9 aspect ratio. The depth I'll just give it 1 inch. Cool, there's my TV. And I can just position it a few inches above the ground. We're going to extrude out a frame around this, so I'll leave a little bit of space for that. But Translate X and Translate Z I've got at 0. If I'm ready to build a frame around it, then I can use the Extrude tool. This is going to be done through a component mode. In order to understand component modes, we need to look at the structure of a polygon mesh object a little bit. I'm going to tap the spacebar in my perspective view, and I want to show you different component modes. Right click and you will see you've got a bunch of different options here. The most important ones are face, edge, and vertex, and they correspond to plane, line, and point in geometry. If I choose face and I click somewhere, I'm selecting a flat face or a flat polygon, which ideally should be planar. I can click anywhere. Notice that as I move the mouse around, I get this red highlighting. That's pre-selection highlighting. I have not actually selected anything yet. Once I click, I can actually select something. And in fact, I can now move things around if I want, but I'm going to opt not to do that at this point. So I'm going to undo that with the Z key. Faces are also known as polygons. They're made up of triangles. We can visualize those triangles if we wish. Go into the display menu and choose Polygons, Face Triangles. And you see those dashed lines there. You can deselect the object. We can see them more clearly. That indicates the division of two triangles for a single polygon. These are all quadrilaterals. They all have 4 sides, but they're all made up of 2 triangles. Maya dynamically triangulates these polygons or flat planar surfaces as you work. And you don't need to think about the triangles. That just sort of happens behind the scenes. The triangle is the basic atomic unit of a surface because a triangle is always flat. Quadrilaterals, however, can be bent. They should be flat, but it's possible for them to be bent. And whenever they're not coplanar, it's a good idea to chop them up into explicit triangles so that whatever renderer you're working with is going to understand that topology. So it'll draw it correctly. So if you've got non-planar faces or non-planar polygons, you should chop it up into triangles. Okay, so that's all about faces. Let's look at the other component modes. I'm going to turn these face triangles back off again. Display polygons, face triangles. And we'll look at edge component mode. Right-click and choose edge. Now we can click on these lines. So these are edges. And they can be moved and operated on as well. I'll undo that. An edge is one-dimensional, where a face is supposed to be two-dimensional. Edges only have length. And there's always 2 vertices on an edge. There's a vertex at either end. And a vertex is just a point. We can right-click and go to vertex mode, and we can select individual points. Maybe just use the select tool so we can see that a little bit better. So those are the points, and once again, they can be manipulated. Press Z to undo that. A point is not actually really a thing, but more of a place. It's coordinates for a certain location. Once you have 2 coordinate locations, you can draw a line between them, and that becomes an edge. If you get 3 or more edges together, you can form a triangle or a surface. Those are our component modes, and they once again correspond to plane, line, and point. Next thing we want to look at is to extrude outward. We want to build a frame for the model. We'll do that in the next movie, but first, let's save what we got. Right-click and go into object mode, and then we'll save out our first version. File, save scene. Make sure that the files of type is ASCII, and then save it as tv.0001.ma. And with this numbering convention, we can use increment and save from now on. Click Save As. We've got our first version.